What's up, guys? Welcome back to the shop. We are just getting right into it with this one. This video was supposed to be out last week, and I just had a heck of a time with this pocket door hardware, and you'll see more of that in a minute. But starting out, I had to put the saw curves in these doors, and I just wanted to lay everything out so I could see, make sure it was all lining up. We even wanted to line up the curves in the lower doors and drawer fronts. The funky thing about these were that the lower doors and drawer fronts didn't line up with the doors above, like where the gaps were or where the breaks in the doors were, but we were still able to get even saw curves, so everything lined up. If that makes sense, you'll kind of be able to see it later when we look at the elevation from the front. And then here we go with the hardware, and right here I had no idea the nightmare I was about to begin. So anyways, started out with getting the panels put together with all this hardware. So it was around this part where things started to get a little annoying. So the instructions that it come with are really just a bunch of photos. Doesn't give you have to cut parts here, and this stuff is very expensive, and it doesn't really give you a way to come up with the dimension for this. And I actually ended up having to cut these twice after I got it all together because I cut them just a little bit too long. And it would really suck to have cut this thing short, and you could see my frustration here. But it would really have not been good to have cut that piece short or too short, and then, you got to buy a new one. And so this right here is where you see those two little arrows. You just tighten that down, and that puts just the right amount of tension on that wire. And this hardware does work really good, so I don't want to bash the company or anything like that, but it was frustrating trying to figure out how it all goes together. And this was another part that was frustrating, figuring out where to drill the hinges on the doors. I would hate to have drilled them in the wrong spot, so I cut a piece of plywood and I measured and figured out where they went. I wanted to do obviously a test piece first before I drill into the doors. And then we'll get this piece attached. And there's these kind of clips that come down and grab the hinge, and then you just tighten down the set screws. And so right here, I was pretty happy. Everything was working pretty good. I was actually doing some Instagram stories. If you're following me on Instagram, you saw I did some posts about this. Anyways, now it was time to drill the doors. So I laid them all out in the correct orientation, just so that I didn't get confused and drill the wrong edge of the door. That would really be a bummer at this point. A lot of work has gone into those doors. In the last YouTube video, you could see how we made those. So these black strips here, they actually have some sticky double-sided tape on the back, which I didn't peel and put on yet because they got to come back off for finish. And so we just screwed them on temporarily, but they are like a magnetic strip that when the door goes in and out, it kind of holds it in the right position. And so it was at this point where, well, maybe not yet. It was at this point, after this, where I realized the cabinets that we already had made, and this was probably a poor decision on my part, having those cabinets put together. I thought they were going to work differently than they did, and so we had to take those cabinets apart, which you'll see in a minute. And so I definitely take the blame for that, for not just waiting until we got the hardware. I thought I had planned it out pretty well. And here you can see the hardware. It works really nice. And here was my next mistake, trying to figure out is the distance you need from that panel to the edge of your cabinet. And so it's not clear on the instructions, it actually doesn't tell you at all on the instructions what that distance should be. And so, yeah, took that cabinet apart. Now we're reassembling it. And I'm feeling pretty confident. We're shooting some biscuits, some Clamex connectors. And the top piece, you can see how the top extends over. It's going to butt into the cabinet next to it, and it'll Clamex together. And then this is our fixed bottom shelf. There will be adjustable shelves above. And so this was like a whole day. Got both of these things done. And these cabinets sit right on top of these lowers. Well, I have that piece of MDF there. There's obviously going to be a piece of stone there that these cabinets are going to sit on. And the reason for that lower fixed shelf is we need something to hold those sides in at the bottom. So we have that set up 18 inches, and it's going to be perfect for their coffee maker and little water machine that they're getting to put in there. And we Clamex these together, and like I said, I'm feeling pretty good. Got these remade, thinking everything is going to be fine. And yeah, at the end of the day, I realized these are not right. So the gap where that top extends past the panel with the hardware on it is a little too big. And not too big that I couldn't adjust the doors and get them to have the right spacing or the right gaps. So I had to take it back apart. And then we put it back together. And this time I got it right. So at this point, I'm 3 days into this thing and just frustrated, trying not to lose it. And yeah, I thought I would be way further along at this point, but I'm not. So anyways, we got it right this time. Doors are lined up. Gaps are good. I had some adjusting to do, but there it is. We got one done. I wanted to do one complete before I took this other one apart and screwed them both up again. And I did, like I said, posted some stuff about this on Instagram during the week and talked to a lot of other cabinet guys who have used the same hardware and have had the same struggles with it. So that at least gave me some peace knowing I'm not just an idiot, because that's how I was feeling. And there we go. Those things were pretty much ready. And then I could start assembling everything around it. This elevation has a lot going on. And these cabinets above are, the whole cabinet ends up, they go up to the ceiling. It's about 10 feet. So the cabinet's like 118. We're going to have a small 2-inch flat crown that goes right up to the ceiling. And while I was working on this stuff, Roger, my brother-in-law, and Rowdy were cranking away on other parts of this project. And then I can move on to milling up some material for the end panels on the right side of that cabinet. It is exposed, so there's an end panel on the right upper section and one on the lower section as well. And these get the saw curves in it also to match kind of everything else. And we're just using some solid boards, get them nice and flat. Make sure our pieces are the right width so that the saw curves line up on the joints. And then we could glue them up. Now these pieces were nice and flat. I could just edge glue them, but throw some biscuits in there. Just makes the glue up go a lot easier. Nothing sliding around, and everything will be perfectly aligned. So that's the Lamello Classic X, just a regular biscuit joiner. And that thing is incredible. If you're interested in a lamello, shoot me an email. It's down in the description. I'll get you hooked up with a sales rep directly through the company. Great people over there, super helpful, and yeah, I mean, you'll love having a lamello in the shop. Nice squeeze out on all my joints there. And so that was obviously the lower one, and then we'll move to the bigger one. So what I thought was going to take me about a week to get as far as I got in 2 weeks was very frustrating. But, you know, this kind of stuff happens. I've had setbacks before, and you just kind of got to roll with it and try not to get frustrated. Because when you get super frustrated, you tend to screw something else up, which I've learned that before as well, the hard way. So, and obviously I did here. I screwed it up 3 times. But anyway, all right, here we go. Here's the other doors. You can bore the hinges for these and get these hung on the upper cabinets. And these doors are about 1 inch thick with, after, you know, the finished size. And so these hinges here are Bloom thick door hinges. So I believe they go from 3/4 to 1 3/8 you can use. If you use the regular hinge on a 1 inch door like that with tight gaps, with like 1/8 inch gaps, the door will hit the other door when you're opening and closing. So we get the thick door hinge. And while I was doing that, Roger and Rowdy were laminating some pieces of 3/4 plywood. These are for some shelves that are part of this elevation, some thick shelves. And throw them in the vacuum bag. The vacuum bag is freaking amazing. Like, it's just awesome. I love that thing. It really does a great job. And so you can see all those doors are grain matched and line up with the saw curves below. Everything needs some adjusting, and then we could get everything put on the lower cabinets, mount the drawer fronts. And mostly I did this before we sanded everything, just because this elevation is so tricky and everything needs to line up that I wanted to put it all together before we take it back apart to sand everything and finish everything. And so that's kind of why I did this. And also for you guys, for the video. It would be boring if I just showed you a pile of drawer fronts. And I moved on to cutting up some oak plywood for the open shelving unit that sits next to the pocket doors. And a lot of this is actually coming apart right now for sanding and finish. And we're actually going to finish everything, all this oak stuff with Rubio, which it's a lot of finishing to do. But the finish that this designer is going for, Rubio is kind of only one we could really get it to look the way she wanted. She does not want a heavy film finish on this thing. So Rubio Vanilla is what we're going to be finishing this with. And we're even texturing it. We're hitting it with a wire brush just to dig out that grain a little bit. And then on the other side of this open shelving unit that's oak, there's going to be kind of a hidden cabinet that's going to have a panel that goes from the countertop to the ceiling, and it's going to have a touch latch door, so you just push it and it'll pop open with some adjustable shelves, because there is kind of some dead space back there that we want to utilize. So once we get our parts edge banded, we could bring them over to the line boring machine, punch some holes. And then we could throw this thing together. So at this point of this project, we have some couple smaller cabinets to finish up, and then the island is the next like bigger item that has a lot of detail in it. Totally different than all the wall perimeter cabinets. Bunch of radiuses and stuff like that. So that's kind of the final difficult thing that we have to make, which we'll be getting into next week now that this elevation is pretty much wrapped up. So those end panels that I glued up before, I could take those and miter fold them onto the face frame piece that'll go in the front. So we put a miter on this, and this is where these Jessam hold down things are really great because they just hold your piece tight against the fence, tight to the table, and gives you a really clean cut. And look at that dust. Dust collection. We are right there. Within the next couple weeks, guys, you're going to have a dust collection video coming at you. We're going to be doing some major upgrades, so more on that. Dust collection is obviously a huge issue for us. So mitering the panels, I had Rowdy come over and give me a hand and just keep pressure down on that thing. And then we could glue it up, or glue the miter onto it. Nothing fancy, just some glue and some tape to hold it until it dries. And then I could start assembling the open shelving cabinet. So there's obviously the thick shelves that we laminated together. This will just get screwed together. And this cabinet, even this one, this is going to come back apart for finish. I did not want to start throwing finish on everything. I really wanted to get this whole elevation together. Typically, if this was just like nothing crazy, I wouldn't do this. But with this cabinet and whole wall having this much detail and this many different pieces fitting together, I really wanted to get it all pieced together and just make sure everything was going to work the way that I thought it would. So we throw it back on this thing and then flip it over and put a piece of nosing on the front. And of course, Lamello Zeta P2, perfect for this. And then we just snap it on. And there it is, right there. So looking pretty cool. These are even going to have some lighting in there. I do need to still add some nosing to the thick shelves, which we'll get to. And then here's that little filler cabinet that goes above. And so there's that tall, skinny cabinet. So that's going to have a panel that continues into the wall there. And that's it. Looking pretty good. And now we could start taking it all back apart for finish. Thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Head over onto the Patreon if you want to become a patron. Great way to support the channel. And we'll see you next week. Peace.